In the year 1714, the Carolina coast was a place where the line between civilization and wilderness blurred. The English colonies in North America were still fragile, carved from lands that once belonged entirely to native tribes and contested by rival European powers, Spain, France, and the Netherlands. The coastline was a patchwork of swamps, estuaries, barrier islands, and vast pine forests. Here, the sea was both lifeblood and graveyard. It brought trade and wealth, but it also carried storms, disease, and pirates. The political situation was tense. The War of the Spanish Succession had just ended, 1701 to 1714, leaving hundreds of privateers unemployed. Men who once fought legally with letters of marque from European crowns now found themselves labeled as criminals. The seas became crowded with ex-privateers, hungry for plunder and unwilling to return to honest labor. The Carolina settlers feared these men more than any foreign soldier. Rumors spread in taverns, on wharves, and at plantation houses. A new pirate captain was haunting their waters. Unlike others who stole cargo or demanded ransom, this man seemed different. He attacked swiftly, but instead of simply taking goods, he often carried off prisoners, whole crews, merchants, soldiers, and sometimes even passengers. His ship vanished into the horizon like a phantom. Some claimed he was a disgraced nobleman from Europe, forced into piracy after betrayal. Others whispered he had made a pact with the devil, for how else could a single ship evade both the colonial militia and the Royal Navy patrols? Fishermen swore they saw strange lights dancing on the waves after his raids, as if ghostly lanterns guided him into secret waters unknown to others. The colonial authorities were helpless. Charleston, then called Charlestown, the capital of South Carolina, was still more of a fortified village than a city. Its defenses relied on a handful of cannons and poorly paid militia. Governor Charles Craven tried to reassure the population, promising that His Majesty's Navy would send ships to patrol. But the settlers knew better. By the time a Royal Navy vessel arrived, the pirate would already be gone. At the heart of this fear was one particular story that spread like wildfire. A merchant vessel carrying passengers, soldiers, and supplies along the coast was intercepted one moonless night. The pirate captain, described as tall, masked, and commanding a crew of hardened men, boarded swiftly. But instead of slaughter or ransom, he did something stranger. He seized 42 prisoners and vanished into the sea. No ransom note was ever sent. No bodies washed ashore. Not even wreckage was found. The ship itself was left adrift, stripped of valuables, but intact. The surviving sailors, those who had hidden or been overlooked, spoke of eerie silence among the pirates, as if they were under strict command not to speak. They remembered only the captain's voice, calm and deliberate, promising the prisoners safe passage before disappearing forever. This tale gripped the colony. Families waited at the docks for weeks, hoping their loved ones would return. Churches prayed for the souls of the missing. Rumors thickened. Some said the captain had taken them to a secret island to build a pirate kingdom. Others swore they had been sacrificed in a ritual for some dark sea god. A few believed the captain himself had not been human at all. The shadow over Carolina became more than just one man. It became a legend. Merchants sailed in convoys, farmers locked away their families, and sailors muttered prayers before voyages. The pirate's ship was said to fly no recognizable flag, only a black sail marked with a faint red streak, like a wound in the night sky. For the colonial elite, this was more than a ghost story. It was a direct threat to their survival. Trade routes meant everything. Without steady commerce, plantations would rot, soldiers would starve, and the crown's grip on the New World would weaken. The Carolina coast was supposed to be the future of English settlement, yet now it seemed cursed by the sea itself. Behind closed doors, governors and merchants debated drastic measures. Should they hire private bounty hunters to track the pirate? Should they appeal to London for stronger naval presence? Or should they, as some secretly proposed, try to negotiate with the mysterious captain, offering him safe harbor in exchange for loyalty? But the pirate himself never revealed his true nature. His raids were unpredictable, his ship faster than pursuit, his methods deliberate and strange. Most feared him, yet a small number admired his cunning. After all, to vanish with 42 living souls without a trace was no simple feat. It was either genius or sorcery. And so, the stage was set. The year 1714 would be remembered not just for peace treaties in Europe, but for the haunting legend of the pirate captain who vanished with 42 prisoners. His shadow stretched over the Carolina coast, growing darker with every retelling, until no man or woman in the colony could look at the sea without wondering if they too might be taken. This was no ordinary pirate tale. This was the beginning of a mystery that would consume sailors, soldiers, hunters, and storytellers for generations. The Carolina settlers knew many pirates by name: Blackbeard, Stede Bonnet, Charles Vane, rogues whose deeds spread across the taverns of Nassau and Charleston alike. But the mystery captain was different. He seemed to appear out of nowhere in 1714, with no history, no legend, no whispers of past battles. To the frightened colonists, he was like a shadow that had materialized out of the sea mist. His ship became the first real clue. Witnesses who had survived attacks described it with conflicting details. Some swore it was a frigate, others claimed it was a brigantine. What all agreed upon was its unnatural speed. It cut through the water as though the wind bent only to its sails. Its hull was painted black, darker than pitch, and many said the wood itself looked different, foreign, perhaps salvaged from multiple wrecks and reforged into something new. The most terrifying feature, though, was its flag. Unlike the classic Jolly Roger with skull and crossbones, this banner bore a simple streak of deep red slashing diagonally across black cloth. It looked like a wound across the night sky. To sailors, it carried an ominous meaning. No quarter would be given, but perhaps something worse than death awaited. When the pirate captain first revealed himself, he struck with precision. Instead of random plunder, he seemed to choose his targets carefully, ships carrying particular passengers or goods. He rarely wasted cannon fire, preferring to maneuver his vessel so that boarding was inevitable. Witnesses recalled how the pirate crew climbed silently, almost ritualistically, onto the decks of their victims. Not a shout, not a drunken laugh, not even a curse. Only the captain's voice giving orders. And what a voice it was! Survivors spoke of its calmness, a strange mix of authority and reassurance. He never shouted, never boasted, never threatened. Instead, he spoke as though each raid were a carefully rehearsed performance. Even when he ordered prisoners to be taken, he promised no harm would come to them. "You will come with me," he was remembered to have said. "Your part is not yet done." The captain's appearance added further layers to his legend. He was always masked, his face hidden beneath a plain leather covering that revealed only his eyes. His clothing was practical but elegant, a long dark coat, high boots, and gloves. Some swore he carried a fine rapier at his side, while others insisted he wielded no weapon at all, relying only on his crew. His build was tall and commanding, though never brutish. Witnesses described him as a man who could silence a crowd without lifting his hand. The crew itself was another enigma. They were disciplined, unlike most pirates who fought chaotically. They boarded in perfect unison, never speaking, never breaking formation. Some survivors believed they were not ordinary men at all, but sailors bound by oath or curse. Their silence was so absolute that many swore they could hear only the sea and the captain's measured voice throughout the raid. As word of the pirate captain's emergence spread, panic tightened its grip on the Carolina colonies. Merchants refused to sail without heavy escorts. Plantation owners complained that their goods were rotting on the docks, unable to reach markets in the Caribbean or London. Even the slave trade, which fueled much of the region's wealth, was disrupted. Investors back in England began questioning whether the colony was worth defending at all if one mysterious man could strangle its lifelines. The governor attempted to calm fears by commissioning posters and decrees. Rewards were offered for any information leading to the capture of the pirate or his crew. Yet no bounty hunter dared take the challenge without more details. Who was this man? Where had he come from? Was he a disgraced naval officer, a European noble fallen from grace, or perhaps even one of their own colonists gone rogue? Stories began to circulate. One tale insisted the captain was a former French privateer betrayed by his king at the end of the War of Spanish Succession. Another claimed he was a Spaniard, striking revenge against English settlers who had stolen his land. Some whispered he was the ghost of a drowned admiral, cursed to roam the seas until he gathered enough souls to replace his lost crew. But perhaps the most chilling rumor was whispered in the taverns of Charleston, that the captain did not seek gold or jewels at all. Instead, he sought people. Each of the 42 prisoners he had taken was chosen deliberately. Merchants, sailors, soldiers, even one colonial nobleman's daughter, all carried some hidden value to him. What that value was, no one could say. The British Crown could not ignore these stories. Reports reached London, and the Admiralty quietly dispatched letters to naval commanders across the Atlantic. Though the war with Spain had ended, the seas remained dangerous. A pirate who kidnapped rather than killed could upset not only trade but also politics. What if he planned to build an army of the lost, a secret colony loyal only to him? Meanwhile, on the Carolina coast, everyday life grew heavy with suspicion. Families who had lost loved ones clung to hope, convinced the captain must eventually send word. Mothers lit candles in church windows, waiting for sons to return. Wives pleaded with the governor for expeditions to search the islands. Some claimed to see signals, fires on distant shores, ships on the horizon that vanished in seconds. The mystery deepened with every passing month. And still, the pirate captain struck. Never too often, never predictably, always just enough to remind the people that he was still out there. Ships reported seeing the red-streaked black flag in the distance before it melted into fog. Each appearance renewed the terror and fueled the myth. By the end of 1714, the Carolina settlers no longer spoke of a pirate. They spoke of the captain, a figure both feared and oddly respected. He was not like the drunken brutes who littered Nassau or terrorized Spanish ports. He was something else, something with purpose, something that felt, in the fearful whispers of the coast, inevitable. And thus the legend of the pirate captain was firmly established. He was not merely a criminal of the sea. He was a phantom who emerged without a past, whose motives were unfathomable, and whose vanishing acts defied reason. What none yet realized was that his story was only beginning. The raid that sealed the pirate captain's legend occurred under a starless sky in the summer of 1714. It was a humid night along the Carolina coast, the air heavy with salt and silence. The merchant ship Providence, carrying passengers and supplies bound for Charlestown, sailed cautiously, its captain aware of the growing menace whispered across every port. The crew was nervous, but no lookout spotted sails on the horizon. To them, the sea seemed calm, until it wasn't. Shortly after midnight, a shadow materialized out of the fog. No one heard a cannon. No signal flare announced its presence. The ship simply appeared alongside the Providence, as though the sea itself had given birth to it. Its black hull gleamed faintly in the moonlight, and its torn flag bore the infamous red streak, the mark now feared from Havana to Nassau. Before the merchant sailors could react, grappling hooks soared across the gap between the two vessels. Lines tightened, and in moments, the pirate crew boarded with uncanny silence. Not a single pistol shot cracked the night. Instead, the disciplined figures moved with rehearsed precision, cutting down resistance not with savagery, but with swiftness. Witnesses later testified that the pirate crew moved like shadows. Their faces were covered in scarves or cloth, their eyes glinting but their mouths never opening. They struck sailors with the flats of blades rather than killing outright. Within minutes, the Providence's deck belonged to them. Then came the voice, the only sound that night besides the crashing waves. "You will come with me," the pirate captain declared, his masked face gleaming faintly beneath the lantern light. His tone was calm, almost gentle, but it carried such command that none dared resist. He walked among the passengers and crew, his gloved hand occasionally pointing at individuals. "You," he said, touching the shoulder of a soldier. "You," nodding to a merchant. "And you," gesturing toward a young woman who clung to her father. By the time he finished, 42 prisoners had been selected. Merchants, sailors, soldiers, and even passengers from England, men and women alike. They were gathered in silence, herded toward the pirate ship with no explanation. Some begged to be spared. Others cursed him. Yet none were harmed. The merchant ship's captain, trembling but alive, begged for his passengers' release. The pirate captain paused, his eyes meeting the man's, and said words that would echo across the colonies. "They will not die. Their journey lies elsewhere." And with that, he returned to his ship. His silent crew cut the lines, and the black vessel slid back into the fog, carrying away the 42 prisoners into the unknown. When dawn came, the Providence still floated intact, stripped of cargo but not destroyed. The remaining crew stumbled ashore days later, shaken and bewildered. Their accounts spread like wildfire. The story of the vanishing act gripped not only the Carolinas, but every port from Jamaica to London. What disturbed the settlers most was not simply the raid itself. It was what followed. Nothing. No ransom demand. No word of the prisoner's fate. No sighting of the ship in nearby waters. It was as though the sea had swallowed the captain, his crew, and the 42 souls whole. Families in Charlestown filled the churches, praying for their loved ones. Merchants gathered in taverns, speculating wildly about what had happened. Some claimed the captain had taken them to a hidden island fortress. Others insisted he sold them into slavery in the Spanish Main. A few, more superstitious, believed the prisoners had been sacrificed in a dark ritual, their souls fueling the captain's ghostly ship. The most chilling theory spread among sailors, that the captain was building an army. Each prisoner taken was a recruit, chosen not for ransom but for purpose. What purpose, no one could guess. British officials scrambled to act. The governor of South Carolina wrote urgent letters to London, pleading for warships to be stationed permanently in the colony. Colonial militias attempted to organize coastal patrols, though their small sloops were no match for the Phantom vessel. Even the Royal Navy dispatched a frigate from Jamaica, but weeks of searching turned up nothing. No wreckage, no sails, no trace. Meanwhile, stories multiplied. Fishermen swore they saw strange lights flickering on the horizon, lanterns moving in patterns like coded signals. Plantation slaves whispered that they heard chanting at night carried across the marshes. Children claimed to see the pirates' red-streaked flag fluttering in the clouds before storms. The vanishing act grew into myth within months. But there were fragments, small, haunting pieces of evidence that suggested the truth might be stranger than rumor. A fisherman discovered a piece of parchment sealed in a bottle, washed ashore weeks after the raid. Inside was a hurried note, scrawled in the hand of one of the missing sailors. "We are taken. Not to ransom, not to death. He speaks of a place beyond. Pray for us." Another discovery came from a wreck on the Bahama banks. Among the scattered timbers was a scrap of sailcloth, black with a faint red streak. Some believed it belonged to the captain's ship, though no one could prove it. The lack of closure was worse than death for many families. Parents refused to believe their sons and daughters were gone. Wives waited by windows, candles burning, certain their husbands would walk through the door. Ministers preached that God would deliver the missing back to their homes. But weeks turned into months, and months into years, and still the 42 prisoners never returned. For the people of Carolina, the vanishing act was more than a crime. It was a wound that never healed. Every ship on the horizon, every flicker of lantern light on the waves, brought fresh hope and renewed fear. Sailors muttered prayers before every voyage, terrified they might be next. Governors and merchants calculated their losses, but deep down they knew. Gold could be replaced. Lives could not. And yet, the legend only grew stronger. The pirate captain was no longer merely a threat. He was a mystery, a phantom, a question without an answer. And that made him far more dangerous than any other pirate on the seas. The Carolina coast would never forget the summer of 1714, when 42 souls vanished without a trace. For the settlers, it marked the moment when they realized that their fragile world, carved from swamps and sea, was not secure at all. The ocean was too vast, too deep, and too full of secrets. And somewhere out there, beyond the reach of kings and navies, the pirate captain sailed on. Though the pirate captain vanished with his 42 captives, fragments of their voices somehow survived. Letters written before departure, journals left ashore, and rumors whispered by those who had known them. These traces allowed their humanity to remain alive in the minds of the Carolina colonists. The missing were not just numbers. They were fathers, daughters, brothers, wives, souls with stories, torn away from their world in a single night. The merchant's ledger, one of the prisoners was Thomas Hensley, a 34-year-old merchant from Bristol. He had sailed often between London, Charleston, and the Caribbean, carrying goods ranging from sugar to indigo. Hensley kept meticulous ledgers, and his last entries before boarding the Providence revealed much about his state of mind. He wrote of his hope to establish a permanent trading house in Charleston, of plans to send for his wife and 2 sons still in England, and of his desire to find steadiness after the chaos of war. His handwriting grew hurried in the final pages, as if he were rushing to capture his hopes before the sea carried him away. When word spread of his disappearance, fellow merchants wept openly in taverns. Hensley was no gambler, no dreamer, one said. If even a man as cautious as he can vanish, what safety is left for any of us? His wife received only silence when she wrote to Carolina for news. All she had was the ledger, shipped back with his remaining goods. The soldier's journal among the captives was Private John Trelawney, only 19, part of a small garrison being transported to reinforce Charleston's defenses. His journal, discovered among abandoned belongings on the Providence, painted a picture of youthful naivety. He described his excitement at seeing the new world for the first time, the wild and endless forests of Carolina and the smell of pine and salt that clung to the coast. He wrote poems about a girl he hoped to marry upon his return. His last entry, dated 2 nights before the raid, read, "The men whisper of pirates again. I do not fear them, for I have faced worse in drills. Yet I dream of a black ship, sails torn but flying strong. In my dream I was not afraid, only chosen. I awoke with the sound of water rushing in my ears." The haunting detail of chosen unsettled those who later read it. How could he have written such words before the very night he was taken? Superstition only deepened. The noble's daughter, perhaps the most talked about of the prisoners, was Eliza Harcourt, 21, daughter of a minor nobleman who had invested in Carolina plantations. She had been traveling with her father aboard the Providence, but only she was taken, her father left behind. Witnesses remembered how she clung to him, crying out as the pirate captain's gloved hand pointed directly at her. Her father never recovered from that moment. He wandered Charleston's streets for weeks, demanding expeditions, offering bribes to sailors, even appealing directly to the governor. He swore he would sell all he owned to ransom her, but no demand ever came. Letters he wrote to London still survive in archives, pages filled with desperation, grief, and rage. Charleston society was transfixed. Some whispered that Eliza had been taken not as a random victim, but for a purpose, her education, her connections, perhaps even her beauty. Young women in the colony grew fearful, convinced the captain sought them specifically. Mothers locked their daughters indoors when ships docked. The disappearance of one noble's daughter rippled outward, shaking the fragile fabric of colonial life. The sailor's song among the 42 was Nathaniel Briggs, a weathered sailor in his 40s, known in taverns for his rough voice and love of sea shanties. Though he left no journal, his shipmates later remembered a song he had sung the night before the raid. 40 souls upon the tide, 40 more the sea shall hide. One by one the waves will take, till none return, for heaven's sake. When the number of captives was revealed, exactly 42, sailors swore Briggs had predicted it in his drunken chant. Whether coincidence or omen, the song spread rapidly. Before long, children in Charleston were whispering its lines as a rhyme, a chilling nursery curse passed down through generations. The widow's letter. Another prisoner, Samuel Cutler, was a blacksmith and widower with a young daughter in Charleston. Days before boarding the Providence, he had left a letter for her with a friend, to be delivered if anything should happen. In it he wrote, "My dearest Anna, should I not return, know that your father's love is stronger than the sea. Do not fear the world, for courage runs in your blood. Whatever fate awaits me, I go knowing I leave behind the best part of me, you." When the letter finally reached her, Anna was only 8 years old. She kept it folded in her dress pocket for the rest of her life, showing it to her own children and grandchildren. Even decades later, she swore she felt her father's hand guiding her whenever storms shook the coast. Echoes among the colonists these fragments: the ledger, the journal, the father's pleas, the sailor's song, the widow's letter, became threads woven into Carolina's collective memory. To the colonists, the 42 prisoners were not lost strangers, but part of their daily lives. Farmers had traded with Hensley. Soldiers had drilled with Trelawney. Families had known Eliza. Sailors had sung with Briggs. Every church sermon mentioned them. Every tavern tale returned to them. They were absent, yet more present than ever. The lack of closure was what tormented people most. Death could be mourned, Graves could be dug, but vanishing left wounds that never healed. Families lived in endless limbo, unable to move forward, trapped between hope and despair. Some insisted their loved ones still lived. Others accepted their deaths, but raged at the mystery. In this way, the pirate captain's power grew, not only through fear, but through memory. Each fragment of a prisoner's voice carried his legend further. He had stolen not just 42 souls, but also the peace of an entire colony. The question of choice as months turned into years, one chilling idea began to take hold. What if the prisoners had not been victims at all? What if, once taken aboard, they had chosen to stay? Sailors whispered that the captain offered them freedom, purpose, even fortune. Some said they had seen familiar faces on distant decks, standing among the silent crew. If true, then the 42 were not lost. They had been transformed. This rumor was perhaps the most terrifying of all. For if men and women could willingly abandon their families, their trades, and their lives to follow the captain into oblivion, then he was more than a pirate. He was a leader, a prophet, or something darker still. And so the voices of the prisoners, half remembered, half imagined, continued to echo long after their ships sailed into the fog. The disappearance of 42 souls at the hands of the mysterious pirate captain could not be ignored forever. By the close of 1714, whispers of the vanishing act had grown into a storm, forcing governors, merchants, and naval officers alike to confront the phantom haunting the Carolina seas. If the crown could not protect its colonies, then what power did it truly have? Thus began the hunt for the ghost captain, a pursuit that would consume ships, men, and fortunes, yet yield little but shattered hopes. The governor's plea. Governor Charles Craven of South Carolina was the first to act. He wrote to London in urgent tones, declaring that trade was collapsing, colonists were living in terror, and confidence in royal authority was crumbling. His letters described the pirate as a devil upon the waters, who strikes with silence and vanishes without trace. While awaiting reinforcements, Craven authorized rewards for privateers and bounty hunters willing to pursue the captain. Notices were nailed to tavern doors, offering gold and land grants to any who captured or killed the pirate. Yet few dared answer. Charleston taverns filled with debates. Some declared the pirate a myth exaggerated by frightened sailors. Others swore he was real and that only fools would chase him. One drunken sea dog summed up the general mood. "How do ye hunt what ye cannot see? How do ye catch a shadow?" The naval response. The Admiralty in London could not ignore the mounting reports. Pirates already plagued the Caribbean, but this one was different. His victims did not return. Was he building a secret fleet? A colony of captives? Or worse, an uprising of men and women with nothing left to lose? By spring of 1715, the Royal Navy dispatched the HMS Falcon, a 32-gun frigate, to patrol the Carolina coast and hunt the ghost captain. Its commander, Captain Edward Markham, was a hardened veteran of the War of Spanish Succession, a man who despised pirates and relished order. Markham boasted openly in Charleston's taverns that he would bring back the pirate's head within the year. "No ghost sails these waters," he declared. "Only men, and men can bleed." His confidence reassured some colonists but irritated others, who had already learned how little bravado meant against the black ship with the red-streaked flag. For months, the Falcon scoured the coast, intercepting vessels, questioning survivors, and even burning suspected pirate hideouts along the inlets. Yet the ghost captain never appeared. Fishermen swore they saw his sails on the horizon, always just out of range. Some claimed the frigate's cannons fired upon shadows that dissolved into fog. By the year's end, Captain Markham sailed away empty-handed, his reputation bruised and his crew demoralized. The rival pirates, while the Navy blundered, other pirates took interest. The Caribbean was a small world. Tales of the ghost captain spread quickly through Nassau, Havana, and Port Royal. To some, he was a rival to be eliminated. To others, he was a curiosity, perhaps even a potential ally. Among the most notable was Calico James Dyer, a flamboyant pirate lord who boasted of command over 5 ships. Dyer swore that if the ghost captain was real, he would find him and take his crew for his own. For months, Dyer prowled the waters near the Bahamas, setting ambushes. But he too returned empty-handed. Though one of his lieutenants claimed their ship had once followed strange lights across the water, lights that vanished the moment they gave chase. Another rival, the feared French pirate Jean Lenoir, declared that the ghost captain was no man at all but a weapon of the English crown, designed to scare colonists into loyalty. He swore he would capture proof otherwise, but his sloop disappeared on a voyage north and was never seen again. Sailors whispered that he had found the ghost captain after all and joined his silent crew. The private bounty hunters, also tried their luck. Hardened men in fast sloops offered their services to Charleston merchants. Some vanished on the open sea. Others returned weeks later with shattered ships and half-starved crews, muttering about storms that rose from calm seas or phantom lanterns that lured them off course. One particularly haunting account came from Captain Elias Proctor, a privateer who returned after 3 months with only 12 of his original 30 men. He told a tale that made even seasoned sailors pale. We chased him 3 nights. His sails glowed faint in the moonlight, always just ahead. No wind could slow him. Then one night, he stopped. We thought we had him. But when we came close, his ship was gone. Only water, only fog, and then voices of men we once knew, calling from the mist. Some of my crew swore they heard their brothers, their wives. They leapt into the sea. I never saw them again. The men of Charleston mocked Proctor as a madman, but none could explain the hollow stares of his surviving crew. The code of silence, every pursuit ended in frustration, every ambush in disappointment. What made the ghost captain so untouchable? Some claimed he knew the hidden shoals and inlets of the Carolina coast better than anyone. Others suggested he had spies in Charleston, warning him of every move. But the most persistent theory was darker still, that his crew of 42 captives had become his most loyal servants. If so, they would never betray him, never break silence, never give away his position. Their very absence became his strength. The fear among the people, the failure of hunters, only deepened the terror among ordinary settlers. Farmers on the coast refused to ship goods. Planters demanded soldiers guard their docks. Children were taught to fear not just storms and fevers, but the black flag with the red streak. In taverns, the hunt for the ghost captain became a grim joke. Each time a ship returned empty-handed, sailors toasted, "To the man who is everywhere and nowhere." His legend grew not because of his presence, but because of his absence. The hunters only proved him more untouchable. The legacy of the hunt by 1716, the search for the ghost captain had consumed vast resources, ships, men, and money, all for nothing. Yet instead of fading, his legend solidified. The colonies now spoke of him not as a criminal, but as a force of nature, a storm given flesh. Those who had hunted him either disappeared, returned broken, or turned their pursuit into drunken tales told in port taverns. No one could catch him. No one could explain him. And worst of all, no one could forget him. For while the hunters failed, the captain endured. His silence remained unbroken. His flag still whispered of in nightmares. And though months might pass without a sighting, everyone knew, somewhere beyond the horizon, the ghost captain sailed on, waiting for his next moment to strike. By the late 1710s, the hunt for the ghost captain had shifted from the open sea to whispered rumors of hidden places. If the pirate could not be found on common trade routes, then surely he had vanished into some secret harbor. The Carolina coast was littered with countless inlets, marshes, and barrier islands. Uncharted wilderness where a man might disappear forever. Whispers of a hidden shore fisherman claimed to glimpse smoke rising from distant sandbars where no settlements existed. Sailors swore they saw bonfires flickering on barrier islands, arranged in strange patterns like signals. Some even told of encountering natives who spoke of an island of shadows, where strangers lived in silence and kept to no tribe. Merchants dismissed these stories as drunken superstition. But others, particularly those who had lost family in the vanishing act, clung to them with desperate hope. They believed the 42 captives were alive, building something under the pirate captain's command. The wrecked sloop in 1717, a storm drove a small sloop ashore near Cape Lookout. Among the wreckage, locals found carved symbols etched into driftwood, spirals, crosses, and unfamiliar marks. Some believed them to be native script, others claimed they were codes used by pirates. But one merchant insisted he recognized the handwriting. It belonged to Thomas Hensley, the vanished Bristol trader. The discovery ignited fresh speculation. If Hensley was alive years after his capture, where had he been? And why would he send symbols instead of words? Scholars puzzled over the markings, but found no clear meaning. Some said it was a warning. Others whispered it was a map. The island hunters, a group of bounty hunters from Bermuda, took the mystery further. In 1718, they sailed north with charts and compasses, determined to locate the rumored island. For weeks, they searched through shoals and estuaries, following gulls and smoke trails. One night, they spotted faint lanterns far inland, lights moving in deliberate sequence. They rowed toward shore, hearts pounding, certain they had found the ghost captain's hideout. Yet when dawn came, the island was empty. No fires, no huts, no footprints. Only silence, broken by the cry of gulls. The men returned shaken, convinced they had wandered into a place not meant for mortals. The forbidden secrets as the years passed. Legends of the pirates' secret island grew darker. Sailors spoke of caves filled with bones, of altars where blood had been spilled, of hidden coves where ships vanished without trace. Some claimed the captain had discovered an ancient site of power, perhaps left behind by peoples long gone. Others whispered that he had struck bargains with forces of the deep, spirits of drowned sailors, or gods of the sea who demanded sacrifice. The Carolina coast had learned to live not only with the shadow of a pirate, but with the greater shadow of what might lie hidden beyond the maps. By the mid-1720s, the ghost captain had become more than a man. He was a living curse upon the Carolina coast. Decades had passed since the disappearance of the 42 captives, yet no trace of them, nor their captor, was ever found. Still, the colonies could not forget him. His absence was a presence of its own, shaping trade, inspiring fear, and stirring restless imaginations. The last hunt in 1726, the Crown made one final attempt. A flotilla of 3 warships, reinforced by colonial militia, swept the coastline in a massive coordinated search. For weeks, they scoured every inlet, every sandbar, and every estuary. Fires burned at night to signal their progress, and cannon salutes announced their arrival in each harbor. But as before, the ghost captain remained elusive. The fleet returned exhausted and humiliated. Some officers claimed the pirate must have fled to another sea. Others argued he had perished long ago, his secrets swallowed by the waves. Yet the people of Carolina were not convinced. A sight in the fog that same year, a merchant brig sailing north reported a chilling encounter. At dawn, thick fog enveloped the sea, and out of it loomed a black ship with a red-streaked flag. No guns fired. No grappling hooks flew, yet the merchant crew swore they saw figures upon the deck, pale and silent, staring with hollow eyes. Among them, one sailor claimed to recognize his long-lost brother, one of the original 42 captives from 1714. Before the merchant could close distance, the black ship melted back into mist, leaving only silence. The brig's crew reached Charleston in terror, unable to agree on what they had seen. The reckoning of memory, no great battle ever came. No final duel between navy and pirate. Instead, the reckoning was stranger, quieter. The ghost captain endured not by conquest, but by remaining untouchable. His legend outlived the hunters, the governors, and even the age of piracy itself. By the 1730s, when other pirates like Blackbeard and Stede Bonnet had been hunted down and killed, the ghost captain was still whispered about, never proven, never caught. He was the storm that never broke, the shadow that never faded. The final legacy in time, mothers warned their children, do not wander near the coast at night, lest the ghost captain take you too. Sailors carried charms to ward off his silent ship. Merchants told newcomers of the vanishing act of 1714 as a cautionary tale. And somewhere, on some uncharted shore, people swore the 42 captives lived still, building fires, carving symbols, keeping their captain's secrets. Thus the reckoning was not of cannon or sword, but of memory. The pirate captain who vanished with 42 prisoners left behind no corpse, no treasure, no proof. Only silence, only fear. And that silence was enough to make him eternal. When the golden age of piracy faded in the 1730s, many names that once struck terror on the seas became little more than history. Blackbeard fell at Ocracoke. Stede Bonnet swung from a gallows in Charleston. Charles Vane, Calico Jack, and countless others met violent, undeniable ends. Yet the ghost captain remained, an absence preserved more vividly than any death. The tale that would not die taverns across the colonies carried his legend from generation to generation. Old sailors told wide-eyed apprentices how, in 1714, 42 souls had vanished without a trace. They would describe the black ship with its blood-red streak, the silent crew, the lanterns, and the fog. Each retelling added something new: a hidden island, a pact with the sea, or a kingdom of captives who served their pirate master in eternal silence. Children grew up fearing his name. To misbehave was to risk being taken by the captain. Even inland farmers who had never seen the sea knew the tale, passed along at firesides as both warning and entertainment. The symbol of the unconquered historians, too, were fascinated. Some believed the ghost captain represented the limits of imperial power. Where the crown had subdued other pirates, he remained free, untouchable, an outlaw who had written his own law upon the waves. For rebellious colonists in later decades, his story became a symbol of resistance, proof that authority could be mocked, eluded, and denied. Even in London, pamphlets and plays whispered about the pirate who was never caught. The more the empire tried to impose order, the more alluring the myth of the man beyond order became. The haunting of the coast sailors still swore, long after piracy had ended, that they glimpsed his vessel in the fog. Merchant logs as late as 1748 contained brief notes, cited strange sails to the east, no signal, no sound. None dared investigate. To challenge the ghost captain was to risk vanishing like those before. Coastal settlers built shrines of driftwood and shells, offerings meant to appease him. Some prayed to him as though he were a spirit of the sea, a dark guardian of the Carolina coast. He became less a pirate than a ghost story given flesh, haunting not just the waters but the very imagination of a people. Eternal silence, what truly became of the 42 prisoners, remained forever unknown. Some believed they died swiftly, their bones scattered beneath shifting sands. Others hoped they lived on, hidden in some forgotten inlet, their voices lost but their souls enduring. But perhaps the cruelest truth of all was that no answer ever came. The silence was never broken. The ghost captain's power lay in that silence, and in the fear it created. And so, 3 centuries later, his story lingers still, not as fact, not as fiction, but as something stranger, a legend that refuses to die, echoing across the Carolina winds like a whisper from the sea. 1.